Hello and welcome back to the Go-Stroid development series. Today we'll be going over how we can handle the player's health using our previously created health handler. On top of that, we'll be adding some visual feedback to our game by using an animation player and a new UI element so the player actually knows what's going on. So let's just kind of get into this straight away. First thing we really want to start messing around with, right, is giving our player the ability to take some damage. So let's go into our scene tree here, under our entity container, to our player ship. Click the little scene icon, we'll open that up. So we don't have a health handler here or anywhere of this to actually receive damage. Now, if we remember correctly, when we created the large asteroid, we made a hurt box handler and a health handler. These two link together to give this health and the ability to take damage. So the player ship's going to need the same thing. So let's go and add those with Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A whilst hovering over the or highlighting the player ship root. We want to add a health handler, and then Command-Shift-A or Control-Shift-A again to add a hurt box handler. Now we can assign the hurt box handler here, or the health handler to the hurt box handler inside of the hurt box handler's inspector. Make sure those are all set up correctly. I'm going to give the player a health of 3. Now the reason I'm doing that is because the hitbox handler specifically, or the thing that does the damage, has a default value of 1, and I only want our player to have 3 health. So the hurtbox handler here, we're going to click Editable Children, and give it a quick collision shape. Now a really good idea with collision shapes is to make this collision shape just a little bit smaller than the actual player ship itself, so about that big. That gives players enough room to maneuver and it just kind of feels fair. So now we're going to hit Control S or Command S and save. Next thing to do is actually set up the collisions for it, right? It needs to know what it's looking for or what it can collide with. So we're going to remove the layer and mask for 1-on-1. The hurtbox handler will be on layer 2 and it will be looking for layer 3. So it's on the player layer and it's looking for the enemy layer. So that handles the actual collisions on the ship. Ready. Now we need to give this something to take damage from, right? So if we go back to our large asteroid, we're going to need to give our large asteroid a hitbox handler now, rather than a hurtbox handler. So let's do that. Command-Shift-A or Control-Shift-A whilst highlighting large asteroid. We'll give it a hitbox handler. We will right-click on it, Editable Children, Collision Shape, give it a collision shape. We're going to make this one relatively wide. Actually, I'm going to pull that into about here. And then I'm going to actually move that collision just a little bit up inside the asteroid so it just seems a little bit more accurate. Now, on the flip side of this, making this also a little bit smaller than the asteroid gives the player just a little bit more room to maneuver. Once again, feels just a little bit fair. So let's hit Command S or Control S and save. Now, what we're going to do very quickly is we're going to go into the health handler here, into the script for it. And then under under apply damage here, we're going to do a quick print statement. We're going to write print, and we're just going to write hit as a string. So what happens here is now, after we actually set up the collisions, like the mask and layer for the asteroid, we should get the word hit being print out from the player itself. So what I can do actually is we'll go a little plus there like so, and we will print out the owner dot name, and that should print do this. There we go. What this should print here is player ship hit. That's what it should print. So let's very quickly go back to the large asteroid, go to the hitbox handler, go to collision, and then let's just set this to the enemy layer. And we'll set it looking for the player mask. Now let's click the run project button and go and see what happens. I just clicked too far, there we go. If we pay attention down to the debugger here, there we go, player ship hit, health 2, health 1, and finally health 0. Now this is a little bug that we ran into in the last episode when we were creating the health handler. That was a small typo on my part. If we go back into the health handler script here, what's happening is we are actually getting hit multiple, like more times than we should, right? It's going 3, 2, 1, 0, and then it's sticking at 0 and we're still alive. That is because of this little statement here. We're going, if current health is less than 0, this needs to be less than or equal to 0. Now, if we go and do that one more time, so hit 1, hit 2, and hit 3, and now it's gone. So that's great, but we don't have any visual feedback yet. So let's go and set up a few things first before we start kind of handling visual feedback. We're going to go and sort out some kind of signals that I want to use, because I want to have a few different signals for, you know, updating some UI, and a final signal for when the player kind of gets queue freed. That way other things in the game will be able to know when it gets queue freed. So to do this, very quick thing we're going to want to do first is go into our auto loads and our signal bus. We're going to add a couple new signals here. The first one will be for signal player underscore died. This will allow us to, you know, signal out when the player's been queue freed, and we'll be able to either, you know, restart the game or respawn the player or something along those lines. So let's create a function for that. Func emit underscore player underscore died. Takes no parameters of void return type, and all we do here is player died dot emit. And now the next signal I want to do is going to be for getting the player's health. Now it's going to specifically be when the player gets hit, because that's when we're going to want to actually update the UI. So a really fun thing we can do here is just create a player underscore hit signal, and then we'll pass through a health value as a parameter, not a value, a value of type integer. And you'll kind of realize that it's the exact same as points to add or current score. Now that is because it's actually pretty much doing the same thing. Let's create a function for emitting it as well. So emit underscore player underscore hit, passing through health underscore, I cannot type today, health underscore value of type int, void return type. Now we go and emit player hit. So emit like so, and we pass through the health value. So with that done, we now need to actually find out a way of kind of letting the player know that the player has actually been hit. Now there are a few ways of doing that. We could do it in the health handler here. Just go to the script. When we take damage or apply damage, we can actually apply or emit a signal here for getting hit inside of the health handler. But personally speaking, I don't think the health handler really needs to know if it gets hit or not, right? It just needs to handle health. The thing that should know if it's getting hit, however, is the hurt box handler here. So as we have here a handle damage function, it knows when it's getting hit, which means we can create a signal from this that will allow us to have anything that has a hurt box handler listen to and then know that it's getting hit. So let's go and do that. Inside the hurt box handler here, we'll create a new tiny signal. It will be for on underscore hit. It won't have any parameters or anything like that. And then all we're going to do here, just after the health handler dot apply damage, we are going to go and use that on hit signal and just dot emit. And now that gives us a new signal inside of our hurt box handler. Now, why is that going to be useful for us? Well, if we actually go back into the player ship here, and we click on the hurt box handler inside of the player ship, we go to node, signals, and we now have this on hit signal. Let's go connect that up to the player ship. Now the player ship knows that it's actually been hit. So what will that allow us to do? Well, the first thing, of course, is it will allow us to signal out. So let's grab this signal bus, dot emit player hit, and it'll allow us to signal out our current health. But we don't know our current health, right? This is the best part about having like root ship or root nodes or root scripts like this, is we can now create an onReady variable, like so, for our health handler as a health handler like so. Scroll back down to where we're emitting that player hit signal, and we can emit out the health handler dot get current health. So now we're getting our current health and we're emitting it out every time we get hit. That's really, really useful and really cool, right? That means we can now update UI or update pretty much anything with the player's current health specifically, and it keeps things completely kind of decoupled in certain ways, right? Nothing else knows that it's the player's health unless it listens to this signal. So let's handle the next bit of visual feedback, which is going to actually be done through an animation player. We haven't covered animation players yet, and I plan on doing a lot of it, like a big deeper dive into animation players. But for now, what we're going to do is we'll click on the player ship, we'll use Control A or Command A, and we'll add a animation player to the player ship. Now, inside the animation player here, if I go to the 2D view real quick, if I left click on it, you'll see at the very bottom here, we have this new little tab open up for animation. This is where we get to do all of our animation stuff. Specifically, if we click on the animation button, we can click new and we can add a new animation. We're going to call this hit. So this animation is going to just be for getting hit. Now, a really key thing with this animation is setting the time of the animation or the length of the animation to be the same time as the invulnerability time that the hurtbox handler has. So if we click on the hurtbox handler, we can see that it has a 1 second invulnerability time. I want to set that to 1.5 seconds. And then I want to go back down to the animation player and set the animation's hit length, which is what this number is here, to 1.5. Now I can use this little scrubber down in the bottom here to zoom in a little bit. I can change the snapping to 0.01. That allows us to kind of scroll through this a bit easier. Technically speaking, actually, we'll just do this with 0.1. 0.1 should be fine. And now what I can do is start adding animation keyframes to this, right? So I can start actually animating something. Well, what do we want to animate? Well, what I want to do is animate the good old flash effect, right? When something gets hit, it starts to fade in, fade out, or it starts to flash, letting the player know that something has hit it. You see it in games like Mario, shield effects on some of the new like asteroid type shooting games, or those shmup games, you know, those fun little ones. You get a lot of effects like that. So that's kind of what we're going to add. So to do that, we're going to click on our Sprite 2D, because this is what we want to animate. And we're going to want to come down to the visibility. Now you'll see there are two things here, modulate and self-modulate. We are going to keyframe the modulate. This color applied to the canvas item. This property does affect the canvas items, or does affect child canvas items, unlike self-moderate, which only affects the node itself. So we can use either of these because this sprite won't have a child, but if it does end up having a child, we will want to modulate the alpha with that too. So let's click this little keyframe button here, or this little key next to modulate. I'm going to use Bezier curves because that just makes it look good. And now we get all of these keyframes for the RGBA, so red, green, blue, and alpha. Alpha is the only one we actually care about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go every 4 seconds. So we'll go up to 0.4 here. I'm going to click on the modulate A frame or modulate alpha frame, right click on it, and then hit duplicate keys. Now I'm going to do the same thing at 0.8 seconds, duplicate keys, and then I'll do it one more time for 1.2, duplicate keys, and I will stick one more at the very end. Now what we can do is go through and start changing the visibility on the alpha. So to do that, we can click on the first keyframe here. We can come up to the inspector and you'll see this value. This is the value for alpha. So if I change that to 0 and now I move the scrubber back, you'll see that our ship just went invisible. So we've got one flash, and now at 0.8 seconds, I'm going to change this keyframe to 0, like so. And finally, at 1.4 seconds, I'm going to do it one more time, change to 0. And now what you'll see is if I press play, we've got this cute little flashing animation for when we get hit. Now I'm going to hit Control S or Command S and save, but you'll see, right, if I start this off by playing this, our ship will stay invisible. Now that can be a little bit of a problem, so we're going to kind of have a little fun workaround for that. If we go back to the player ship script, we can close this animation player tab now because we won't be needing it. We're going to need to have access to the animation player inside of this so we can start using it. So to do that, we're going to create an onReady variable again, just like we did with the health handler. And we'll typecast it as an animation player, like so. And now we can start doing things with it. So specifically, on Hurtbox handler hit, so when we get hit, we are of course going to want the animation player to play that hit animation, right? So let's go and do that. Let's go animation player dot play. So this is the play function. Now it says we need to pass through a string name. So I'm going to pass through hit. And I'm doing that because that is the same name as the animation. So now our animation player should play it getting hit when we actually get hit. Let's go and get hit and make sure that's actually functioning. There we go. We are now flashing every time we get hit, but we go completely invisible afterwards. So the next thing we do to kind of get around that, right, is if we click on the animation player in the scene tree, we go to Node, Signals, pull this out a little bit. You'll see in the animation mixer drop down here, we have animation finished. This is a signal that gets emitted when the animation finishes playing its current kind of run through. But as it says there, this signal is not emitted if the animation is looping. Our animation, however, is not looping, so we can double click on this, attach it to the player ship, and inside the player ship, all we have to do here is grab the animation player again, and then use dot play, and we are going to play, in all caps here, the reset track. So as you can see, there's a reset track here, and what that does is reset the values back to their default values. So it'll reset the alpha back to 1. Now, with the animation player kind of sorted, let's go and do this one more time here. Let's go and run into this. That's 1, that's 2, and we are completely resetting our animation. The only time it shouldn't happen is if we die, which we did. So let's go and start handling our death a bit more. Now we've got a really cool functionality already set up for handling our death. If we go to the health handler, we go to the inspector, or the node, and we actually have a signal for on death. So let's go and hook that up to the player ship as well. Now what do we want to do when the player dies? Well, really simply, we're just going to emit the signal that we created in the signal bus for player death. So we'll go signal bus dot emit player died. And that's it. That is handling the death currently. Now, the final thing that I really want to do here, of course, is, hook up the UI element. So let's actually go to our UI node and let's go and add a new UI element. Now, this is going to be really, really simple. We're going to click the score label that we currently have. We're going to use Control D or Command D, and we're going to duplicate that label here. We're going to go to anchors, move to the left side of the screen, rename this to player health label, hit Control S or Command S to save, go to the UI, pull in that player health label as an onReady variable, typecast it as a label for that good old autocorrect. And, well, if we really think about it, all we're actually doing here is the same thing as setting a score up, right? We're just getting the current health, and that's what we're setting it to. So we can pretty much just copy what we've done here. Let's go and create a new variable for the current underscore player underscore health and set it as an int equal to 0. Okay, so what else do we have here? Well, we have this function for setting the score up. Well, let's go and create a function for setting the health up then. Set underscore player underscore health underscore label, like so. Let's pass through the current underscore health as an integer, and then do a void return type. And we can do the current player health is equal to the current health. And then we can just go and set the text on the player health label here. So player health label dot text is equal to the str, so string conversion, for the current player health. Now, if we remember correctly, when we were setting up the score label, we have this signal being fired every now and then. And every time we update our score, it fires this function for us. And what was the last signal we created for our player? That is correct. We set up a signal in our signal bus for dot get underscore player. Oh wait, no, it was player hit, I think. Player hit dot connect. And we connect that to set underscore player health label, remove those end parentheses, and now it's done. Final thing we have to do here, of course, is once again the same thing we did with the score label. We call set underscore player health label and we pass through the current player health. Now, here's the downside, right? If we do this, we are going to have to hard set the current player health here to 3. So how else can we actually go about this? Well, really simply, we can go back to the player ship, we can come to the very top here, and we can get access to the ready function inside the player ship. So func underscore ready, and we can now forcibly emit that signal from the signal bus for player hit. The emit underscore player hit signal, and we can pass through the health handler dot get underscore current health. And what that's now going to do is, of course, update our health on ready. So if I scroll down, I could have just called the on herbox handler hit function, which is already there, but it might play the animation immediately, and that might just look a bit weird. So let's go and hit play and find out. Our health is immediately updated. Let's go and get hit. Now down to 2, it's now down to 1, it's now down to 0, and our player has been Q-freed. And that is it. We have handled health. Some good feedback and a nice UI element to go with what we're doing currently. And it's starting to kind of shape up. We're actually starting to have a good little game here. Now we've got a lot of work to do to make sure it looks and feels good, and we've got a lot more improvements and kind of expansion to do in the score system and how the meteors work. And yeah, kind of just do a little bit more than we currently have. But for now, that is all I have. Thank you for watching. I hope you're having a great day and a great game dev journey. If you have any questions or you want to come say hi, please come down to the Discord. A link will be in the description. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.